Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of Costa Rica Crypto, where today I'm able to sit down with Mr. Thomas Cox, and we're going to be talking about the Alliance a little bit today. So welcome, Thomas. Thanks for sitting down with me again.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Absolute pleasure as always. So what's kind of the latest with the EOS Alliance? What's going on? What do you guys
see. Yeah, as we're recording this, it's just been a few days after our first Alliance board meeting. And so for folks who maybe not up to speed on, the Alliance is this currently self-organizing entity. We're intending to create it as a nonprofit. We're still in the process of creating the legal entity in a jurisdiction. We thought it might be Switzerland. We thought it might be British Virgin Islands. Right now, I think it's probably going to be Jersey, the island of Jersey. But at some point, we'll build this nonprofit. And as we're spinning it up, the function we want to perform is to help the community communicate with itself. We've got all these people around the globe who are using, channels like your video show and then Telegram and WeChat and various other things. But other cryptocurrencies and other platforms have made really good use of a foundation, like the Bitcoin Foundation, the Ethereum Foundation. An entity that serves as a focal point. And we thought about how we might want to do that for EOS. What became very clear is EOS has already got all the power sorted out. We don't want a new entity trying to grab power, but we need is an entity that wants to serve the communication needs of the community, because no one's able to do that, I think, quite adequately enough the way I think it needs to be done. For instance, let's say we were going to hold a referendum on a new constitution, which, by the way, very likely we're going to do very soon. Okay, so who's the we, and how do we find each other, identify each other, and have a coherent conversation around what sorts of things we all think a constitution should have in it? And if we want to have an actual dialogue and not just start here's my initial thought, and here's your initial thought, let's all vote for our initial thoughts. Wouldn't it make more sense to actually have some dialogue around that, and you inform me and I inform you, and in the process we come up with some third approach that makes us both happier than either approach would have alone? Isn't that how communities build, right? But who's going to hold the space for that? Who's going to translate from English to Mandarin to Korean back to English? Who's going to staff this? Who's going to hold the regular weekly, whatever the heck it is? There's some blocking and tackling that has to happen to make communication real. And there's no decision-making power in that. It's just a service, but it's an incredibly important service for a decentralized entity like the EOS mainnet owners. So with that thought, a guy named Brock Pierce, who was one of the founders of Block.one, he actually helped bring together a bunch of the folks who invested in Block.one pre-ICO. Brock made an announcement in Shanghai on July 23rd, announcing the creation of this entity. And at that time, I was announced. He just asked me a few days earlier if I would be interim executive director, because I'm pretty well known. They've got some experience with the governance side of things, which is where all of our big challenges are, and most of our communications need to be around the process of governance, referendum, voting in for worker proposal system, voting in constitutional changes, tackling the evolutionary needs of the chain.
I think some people are under the perception. This was something that was clarified to me last time I spoke to Kevin Wilcox, of course, who's involved with you, that this is maybe they're not important enough, or maybe they, I think they're intimidated by the process a little bit, in the sense that they don't understand that ultimately the talks that you guys are having in here is a huge contribution towards the future of where EOS is heading. And that ultimately one of the things that Kevin explained was that everybody has a right to be in there and participate, and I'm going to say this, in meaningful conversation regarding some of the topics. As I understand, your intention is to make this very all-inclusive.
Absolutely.
it's a place where people can come and kind of maybe at first witness some of the discussions that are going on. But I know that you guys have the intention to build this as every single token holder has the right to be there and has the right to contribute. Am I correct?
Yeah, and not that your contribution will necessarily be persuasive to others, but at least you have the opportunity and I think the right to voice it and be heard. And certainly it's our goal to exclude no one and to make everything as accessible as possible within our budget constraints. I mean, I mentioned the 3 languages we're translating into: English, Korean, and Chinese/Mandarin. Somebody just volunteered to start doing Russian. Just like this week, Dmitry of, I think it's Meet.one, said, "There's no Russian call. I'll start one." And he just started doing a weekly call in Russian, building off the weekly calls we were already doing in the other languages. And what about Spanish? Well, no one's quite stepped up to organize Spanish yet, but nothing to stop them. This is going to continue kind of indefinitely because we're always going to need to talk. Right now, it's very intensive. It's on the Constitution. There's this, we laid out what's initially a 12-week plan to step through all the articles of the version 1 Constitution, the one that's that's in force today, all the articles in Dan Larimer's version 2 Constitution that he promoted in a Medium post a few weeks or a month or two ago. And I just recently heard from some guys, I think out of China, but they wanted to build an international team specifically to build a version 3 that synergizes 1 and 2, which I've been hoping somebody would do. I kind of thought I might do it, but there's no way I've got time for it. And I'm not the right person to do it. And if we can put together a version 1, a version 2, and this new synergistic version 3 in a reasonable time frame, we could put all 3 of them on a ballot for a referendum. And you could say, vote for whichever one of these you'd be willing to live under. And vote for up to all 3 if you like all 3. Or just vote for the 2 that you think you could live under, or just vote for the 1 you could live under. And maybe even offer none of the above as an option. I don't know. That's a pretty libertarian thing to do. And the work of creating clear choices for a referendum to be run on, that is not trivial. I live in Oregon. We do ballot initiatives all the time. We probably every 2 years have at least 3 or 4 statewide initiatives where the voters are asked to set policy. Sometimes it's to roll back something the legislature did. Sometimes it's to enact something brand new. We had this thing called, I think it was Measure 11. I get the names confused now. It's been a while since I studied it. That set mandatory minimums for violent crimes. And, it was just, there was this big disconnect between the legislature and the judiciary, being kind of the common perception of voters that violent crime, there were no mandatory minimum sentences for crimes of violence against people. And so this thing was carefully written and fought over and debated and put on the ballot, and it passed. And that process of having a thought, figuring out how do you phrase it, putting it in front of people to discuss it first before the balloting, and then putting it on a ballot and asking for a decision, that's a pretty involved process. And I think that the EOS Alliance is a good place to hold some of that activity. What I don't ever want to see, and what the Alliance has made clear from its earliest days, is we never want to control that. If somebody wants to put out a ballot initiative or a referendum initiative that says, we want to confiscate everybody's token holdings and burn them all. Well, I think that's really dumb. But guess what? That's not mine to decide. That's the voters to decide. All I have to do is say, have you passed whatever the threshold is for a referendum question? And it's probably got to be in English. It'll probably have to have some sort of structure to it. If there's any code related to it, you have to publish the code and stick it somewhere and have a hash of the thing that you're referencing, and that hash has to be on chain, so you can't go back and change it later and say that what you voted for was really this other thing. No switcheroo stuff.
How do the votes work? Is it one token, one vote?
We've always done one token, one vote for block producers, and there isn't any strong identity system to do it any other way. If you try to do one account, one vote in order to dilute the power of big holders, Well, that's just an incentive for me to take my 1,000 tokens and open up, 100 accounts or 1,000 accounts of 1 EOS each. And it's like, what? That's not value add. There's no upside there. So, longer term, I think it would be great if a commonly accessible strong identity or strong pseudo identity system could be created. I'm a big fan of having things go through multiple passes. So, for instance, we're talking. I mentioned the EOS Alliance board meeting. We know we want to elect our first board member in 3 months, sometime in December. We want to put up, and hopefully it can go quickly. And we're not even sure which voting system we'll use because none of them's in production yet. And we're thinking, we're an independent sort of private organization. We could do token voting, but we could do kind of other things. We could like sell memberships for, $20 or $100 or whatever, and just have the members vote, be member driven, right? And that's got pluses and minuses. And then the thought came, well, what if the members voted on candidates and there was some like modest sized bar, and that every candidate that passed a certain threshold would go on to the general election. And so the members could do a first pass of selection, but it would ultimately be the token holders who would pick from those candidates who made it out of the initial selection process. Something like that. That way you don't have like thousands of people on the ballot. You've got, 2 or 10 or 20 or something for the one position.
Why should, and I'm just being objective, I don't mean this, but wow, why should people care about the EOS Alliance?
Yeah, maybe they shouldn't. And the only reason you would want to care about the EOS Alliance is if you care about the mission the EOS Alliance has taken on, which is helping the EOS ecosystem live up to its potential, to empower EOS for all, and all, like every chain, not just mainnet, but Ono, Telos, Warbly, any of them. And anybody that wants to do a private permissioned EOS fork somewhere, they've got programming needs, they've got needs. As software developers, we want to represent them too. We want to make sure they're represented in the larger community, because we do think that EOS has an incredible potential to provide the tools for a decentralizing transformation of human culture and upending power structures in a way that's good for humanity, good for equality, good for liberty, good for freedom and a future where your potential isn't crushed by existing oppressive power structures. And I think the way to do that is you get rid of massive power concentrations and break things apart and massively decentralize. And to do that effectively, you will need technology to support you. And I think EOS could be that technology. So if we want the EOS technology to be able to live up to its potential, we need to do everything we can to help it get past any and every challenge it faces. And right now, the biggest challenge is a governance challenge. The biggest challenge is having the first referendum, settling the Constitution, at least for now, because you can always revisit constitutions, you can always amend them, but settling it for now. Getting ECAF either ratified and solidified or set off to be like co-equal with all the other forums and not special anymore, or something. Or go with Dan's approach and get rid of arbitration entirely at the so-called base layer and just have it be advisory and turn the block producers into like a jury system as well as block producers. Just every time I think about it, I cringe. But maybe it could work, and that's not mine to decide. It's the voters. But navigating these decisions and having final for now answers, and then going to the next question, and steering this ship, and having the will of the token holders reflected in policy decisions that block producers then carry out, that's huge. And when a blockchain can evolve and respond rapidly to its environment, it can solve problems and make a difference. And when a blockchain becomes too rigid and too set in its ways and unable to change, unable to grow, unable to respond, it's at risk of being passed by. I don't think Bitcoin will ever go away, and probably Ethereum won't either, but some of these other chains that are very, very hard to change, they don't have good governance approaches, I think their days are numbered. And if EOS can't do its governance correctly, its days are going to be numbered too.
So ultimately, it's a contribution to a place where people can come, discuss ideas, and
and have their ideas translated, and have other ideas translated into their local language so they can understand them. And where we can say, hey, token holders, we just did this 12-week constitution thing, and here are 3 drafts that have come through our process. And we're going to hold a working group on how to write a ballot initiative to put on the referendum. I think that's going to be a huge service, because right now I don't know how to write ballot initiatives for EOS. I don't even know which of the 2 competing voting systems is going to end up being the referendum system. Let alone what arguments do they take? What format do I use? How do I phrase things? I don't know, but I need to. And rather than me educating myself and then going off into a closet, why don't we collect a team, have them educate all of us, and publish it somewhere where we can all find it? That to me is moving the ball forward. And it doesn't usurp token holder powers. It doesn't step in front of the block producers and take away their responsibilities or powers. It doesn't disempower ECAF or any private arbitration forum. But it does do something we need, and that is the ability to focus our attention as a distributed community, the truly decentralized community. We still have to do things. And for a decentralized group to do things requires periodic focus, which requires a focal point. And to me, that's the Alliance.
Where can people catch some of these meetings? Where can people find you guys, and where can people find
Great question. We have an EOSalliance.io website, which has an events page, which lists the upcoming week's calls in various languages and various topics. We have one working group, a very active working group, on dispute resolution and arbitration. Let me take a moment and just brag about this. I have in no way responsible for anything here. I just love it so much, and it makes me look maybe good by reflection or something that I'm in the vicinity. But Amy Wan, W-A-N, she's heads up this group called SageWise, and SageWise has been doing dispute resolution smart contracts on Ethereum, and allowing people on Ethereum to bake in arbitration into their contracts, even though the chain has no real arbitration in it. But at the transaction, at the contract level, you can bake it in, and that'll connect you with a marketplace of dispute resolution professionals. And I'm like, that's really cool. Wish you'd come over here and work on EOS. And I just called her up and said that I thought she's doing amazing, cool work, and wish she'd come play in the EOS space a little bit. Well, she decided to head up a working group on dispute resolution and arbitration for us. And she recruited a number of amazing people, one of whom was a guy named Colin Rule. Colin Rule was the head of online dispute resolution for eBay PayPal. 6 million disputes a year. All right. This guy literally wrote a book about this. He understands. Then he went and founded an online dispute resolution company. And so, he's like the one guy who has more experience than all the rest of us put together in how do you do blockchain-based dispute resolution and arbitration in a way that actually works. When you combine that with the reading that we should all be doing, which is the Norton Rose Fulbright analysis of the governed blockchain, which says, how do you make a blockchain actually be governed, and what do you need to do to make that happen? They've got a checklist that they figured out. When you combine those two, you get a very clear roadmap of what we need to do as a community to make sure that the mainnet works for years to come. And if it weren't for Amy putting that work group together, we would not have Colin Rule hosting or being questioned on those work group calls that are every week. And you can see, if you go to the past events page on the EOS Alliance, you can see the videos and the written summaries. Just tremendous stuff. And I tell you, the first time I saw the people who are like nattering back and forth about ECAF on the arbitration channel, they're all commenting on like, "Wow, Colin was amazing." It's like, "Yeah, he really was." And he said this. "Yeah, he did. That was great." It's like this breath of fresh air and knowledge and wisdom and experience, and that's the kind of thing that the Alliance can bring. Is this work group structure that anybody can make a work group on a topic, recruit people, and will help you get published, will help you get an audience, and will help you move the dialogue forward in the community. So, I'm talking right now to some guys who do block producer rating systems. And I even created my own framework for that, although I haven't had time to go anywhere with it. And I would like to see a public group, a work group, on block producer rating schemes and block producer rating frameworks and different approaches, and have them all like pool their thinking and come up with like 3 or 4 different competing ways, and a little marketplace of rating systems, and which in those rating systems would then inform proxy services. Because, do you want to have your vote proxied to some random guy who makes up his own mind, or do you want to proxy to somebody who thinks like you think and shares your values, and who is well informed and is looking at, provable facts about block producers? So there's just all these initiatives that keep coming up that you think, well, who can do that? Well, boy, the Alliance can hold space for them and be like a midwife as these things give birth to cool ideas.
I'm going to make sure that I link to absolutely everything below, including the Alliance channel, including the website, my friend. Yep. I do think the Alliance is important. My question was tongue-in-cheek. I think people should care. If they care about their investment, and if they care about the direction that EOS is going to take, then I think that EOS Alliance is something that's important to the individual token holders just as much as the DApp creators, block producers, and everybody else. So I'll make sure that I link to everything below. And I just really appreciate you sitting down and taking the time with me to do this today. I hope maybe we could even do kind of weekly updates moving on forward in the future.
I would love to do weekly updates. Let's do that.
Weekly updates it is. And just thank you so much again for sitting down with me, my friend. I appreciate it. And I look forward to kind of seeing some of the discussions. I'm in there. I might not always be active, but I do scroll through and read a lot of the conversations, and it's always really, really interesting. So I definitely encourage other people to do the same. And also, if you are new to EOS, and if you are a token holder, if it all seems a little bit intimidating to you, then I encourage you to just go into the room and just start reading about some of these conversations that are being had, because they do matter. They are important to you, they are important to EOS, and they are important to the future of everything that everybody's doing here. So once again, I really thank you, Thomas. I appreciate all the work that you do. Tell Kevin I said hello, and I look forward to having you on for weekly updates.
Awesome. Take care.